Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. The title for today's story goes like this. Boyfriend tries to fix our relationship after cheating by proposing to me in front of his family, so I let them all know about what he did, and my god, did they plan a revenge for me. I'm 27 female, I'm a creative director in one of the biggest media companies in my city. It's always been my dream to work in such a space because I've always been the creative kind. From childhood, I was always the so-called artsy kid who loved to innovate and create. After finishing college, I worked so hard doing internships and trying to make contacts with higher-ups and build up my resume. And after a lot of hard work and sleepless nights, I managed to land my dream job. This was by no means a small feat. I was the youngest creative director in the firm, and I was doing a pretty good job at it too, because I was getting nothing but praise from my fellow employees, and especially my boss, whom I admired tremendously. I was doing considerably well in my professional life, but I couldn't say the same regarding my personal life. I was never really one for relationships, because I was always so focused on either my studies or work, so when I met Max, 30 male, I didn't think it would go anywhere or lead to anything serious. Eventually, I found myself falling for him. We worked together at a local restaurant. I tried to work part-time through college to get a little extra cash, and because of this, we began spending a lot of time with each other and grew pretty close. When he asked me out, I said yes. This was 5 years ago, and oh boy, I wish I could go back and change everything. Our relationship started normally enough. At least the first few years were fun. He was a true gentleman, always treated me with respect, and within a year of dating, we moved in together, yes, pretty quickly. I genuinely felt like I had found the one, because he was extremely empathetic towards me. Especially when I got too stressed with college and work, he'd always find a way to calm me down and cheer me up. The real problem started after I graduated. I had made it very clear that my career was one of my biggest priorities. I come from a family with not a lot of money, so I wanted to ensure that I got a well-paying and secure job so that I could provide for my family as well as live a comfortable life. My biggest goal was to work in media, and it was not easy to get into big companies as a fresher, and I had to work my butt off trying to build contacts. I managed to get a couple of internships the year after graduating, and it was a lot of work. I didn't have any time to work at the restaurant anymore, so I resigned and started working exclusively in media. This is where I began to see the cracks in our relationship. Max, who had always been so supportive of me, especially when it came to my career, suddenly became dismissive of me. He still worked at the restaurant, and I feel like he resented me a little bit for leaving the job and working on my internships. He never told me this directly, but I could make out from his behavior that he wasn't happy. He would barely listen when I spoke about work, and always tried to change the topic to what he did that day. Basically, whenever I spoke about work, he would get offended and moody and either change the topic or go away. I didn't really understand what was bothering him so much. Every time I tried talking to him, he would act like it was nothing, but jokingly say, "You abandoned me," or "Now you must think that you're better than me," or something along those lines. Over the next year, while I did more internships and built more contacts in my social sphere, I felt as if our relationship was drastically changing. Max never went out with me anymore. We barely went out on dates, and he only spoke to me when he needed something. He also was extremely possessive. If he saw me talking to other people, especially men, he would accuse me of flirting with them as soon as we got home. I even caught him checking my phone a couple of times going through my chats. I kept telling him that I loved him and that I would never cheat on him, but he just kept getting more and more suspicious. He became distant and cold, and I didn't know what to do about it. Every time we spoke, it led to an argument, so I decided to focus on my work instead. When I finally landed my dream job last year, I was so excited to share the news with Max. When I told him, he didn't even pretend to be happy for me. He told me that I never had time for him anymore and that this job was going to separate us even more. I was heartbroken and didn't know what to say. I tried my best to work things out with him, to try to understand why he was feeling this way, but he stormed off and left. I tried calling, but he had switched off his phone. I thought that he'd come back the next day, but he didn't. I was beginning to panic now, but he showed up 2 days later hugging me and apologizing to me. I was so glad to have him back, I didn't even question his past behavior. He told me that he loved me so much and didn't want to lose me to my job, and that's why he acted like an idiot. He said that he was sorry and that he would try working on us again, and I, like an idiot, believed him. After that, I started to feel like things were getting back to normal. I was thriving at my new job, and while things were still a little shaky at home, I could tell that Max was at least trying to change. He started taking me out on dates again, and even asked about my work. This was more than I could ask for. All I wanted was his support. It was a part of my job to socialize with a lot of people to try and get deals, and Max would get extremely possessive of me. But apart from that, our relationship was doing much better than earlier. I introduced him to all my coworkers and even my boss, and would tell him all the funny things that happened at work. And yes, I would sometimes gossip about my coworkers with him as well. But who doesn't? Max had left his job at the restaurant to focus on a startup with one of his friends. So, I was the sole earner, but I didn't mind that. I wanted him to get new interests and branch out a bit. Everything changed 3 months ago. I landed a big client at work, and it was a huge deal. Everyone wanted to celebrate by going out, but I wanted to celebrate with Max. I left work early, thinking that I'd surprise him with a home-cooked meal and some wine. But when I reached home, I could tell that something was off. The TV was on in the living room, which was odd since no one was supposed to be at home. All the lights were on, and when I went out to the bedroom, I nearly dropped the wine because there he was, in bed with another girl. In our bed, with another girl. It was clear that they weren't expecting me. The girl looked embarrassed and tried covering herself, and Max was too shocked to move, and so was I. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I went to the living room still in disbelief when Max came running to me, apologizing, telling me that this was a huge mistake, and begging me to forgive him. I was in no mood to listen to anything. I told him to just leave. I didn't want to see his face or hear how sorry he was. I needed time to think, and after a lot of resistance, I literally had to push him and the girl out of my house. I felt betrayed, but when I thought things were getting better and our relationship was working, this happened. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, after I had calmed down a bit, I answered his call. I just needed to know one thing. How long was this going on behind my back? Max told me that after I got the new job and we had that big fight, he went to the bar to clear his head, and that's when he met Lily. It was a one-time thing, but then it slowly progressed into a full-blown affair, which has now been going on for a year. 1 whole year, and I had no clue. Initially, I was wrecked. I didn't go to work for a few days because I was that emotionally depleted. I had spent 5 years with this man, and we were literally living together. He called me and tried to see me frequently, begging me to take him back, but I realized pretty quickly that he was actually holding me back. He was an insecure, jealous, possessive man who was mooching off of me for all these years, while at the same time reprimanding me for working hard. I decided to block him. This whole cheating scandal was actually a blessing in disguise. It took a few weeks, but I slowly started recovering from this and started focusing more on work and my mental health. A month later, Max showed up at my apartment and told me that his sister was throwing a graduation party and that she had invited us. I was surprised that she still wanted to invite me after what happened, but that's when he told me that he hadn't told his family about us yet. He begged me to go with him for just this one thing. He didn't want to ruin the party, and after it was done, he would come clean and we wouldn't have to interact again. I was completely against this, but I did like his sister, and this was a big deal for her. I made him promise to tell his parents everything after this was done, and I decided to go. Bad idea. When we went to the party, Max started acting all affectionate with me again, trying to hug me and kiss me, which was extremely uncomfortable for me because I was no longer interested. The party was huge, with his entire family and a lot of friends, and I soon realized that he hadn't told anybody about the breakup. His parents and sister were happy to have me here. They wanted me to mingle, but I just stood to the side trying to blend into the background and wishing this was over. That's when Max stood up and told the crowd that he had a very special announcement. He then pulled me to the center of the room, got on one knee, and pulled out a ring. Everybody started cheering, and I was absolutely mortified. What was he trying to do? I asked him if we could chat in private for a minute, but he insisted on not going. I didn't want to ruin the party, but I was in a fix. I couldn't believe that he was trying to corner me like this. I said no. Everyone was silent now. Max started crying, acting like he was the victim. His parents ran over to console him, looking at me with anger, as if I was the bad guy. I told them that we needed to have a chat in private, but they did not listen. Instead, they started yelling at me. I had had enough. I told them everything, the jealousy, the possessiveness, and dismissiveness, and how he hated that I was earning more than him, how insecure he was, and the cherry on top, how I caught him red-handed with another girl in my bed. I then told them that their precious son had been cheating on me for a whole year before I even found out, and that I kicked him out of the house for over a month now. Max was trying to trap me by proposing in front of his family. He wanted to get back with me because he honestly didn't have anywhere else to go. I was the one who paid for everything, and he quit his job. As you could expect, everyone was silent. Max and his parents looked embarrassed in front of everybody. It was never my intention to spoil the party, but what else was I supposed to do? I had no idea that Max was going to propose. I didn't know his parents were going to yell at me for no fault of mine. I had had enough of people putting me down and trying to insult me and embarrass me. I was not going to take this anymore and wanted to be done with Max for good. I left the party and went straight back home feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Yes, this was not the ideal way to break it to his family, but it's done and I don't have to deal with this whole thing anymore. For the next month, I was extremely busy with work. Remember the huge client I landed? We were now in talks of a huge collaboration with them, and I was the head of the entire deal. So I had no time to think about Max or his family. I immersed myself in my work, trying to make sure everything was perfect for the client's visit. On the day of the meeting, I was a nervous wreck. This was not only a huge deal for me, but my company as well, and I could not afford to screw it up. When I reached the office, I was surprised to see a few of my coworkers look at me oddly and give me the cold shoulder. I didn't have much time to think about why they were acting like this because I was so focused on the meeting. Then, one of my friends pulled me aside and told me that an anonymous email was sent to a few of my coworkers that contained screenshots of me gossiping about them in very private conversations I had with, you guessed it, Max. See, it was nothing bad, just mostly me complaining about how a few of them didn't do their work properly. It was a little bit unprofessional of me, I admit, but don't we all gossip a bit? That's why they were looking at me so weirdly in the morning. I felt so guilty. I wanted to apologize to them immediately, but my client was on the way and I still had a lot to do. I decided to speak with them after the meeting. I was so absolutely furious with Max. How could he do this to me on such an important day? I didn't have too much time to dwell on it because my client arrived and my boss escorted him and we began our meeting. As our meeting progressed, we were interrupted by my assistant, which annoyed me because I told her not to interrupt unless it was an emergency. She said that she needed me for a minute and that it was urgent. I apologized and excused myself from the meeting to see what the issue was. My assistant led me to the lobby where I saw three men whom I had never seen before in my life waiting for me. Two of them even had bouquets of flowers. They looked at me as if they knew me, but I was extremely confused. I asked them what they wanted and their answers made me even more confused. Apparently, I had asked them to meet here at this time and on this day. At this point, I genuinely didn't know what was happening. When I told them that I had never spoken to any of them, I had never even seen them before, they started getting agitated and told me that I had been speaking to each of them for over a month. That's when things began clicking in my mind. I asked to see the chats and they were right. Quote unquote, I had been speaking to them for a month now. They didn't know about each other but began chatting with quote unquote me within a few days of each other. I read through the chats and was baffled to see just how provocative they were. I would never chat with someone like that, especially if I didn't know them. I was shocked to see that they also gave me money, $500 each. Apparently, I promised to do some naughty things with them later. I started feeling lightheaded. This could not be happening to me right now. My assistant literally had to hold me up. I told him that this was all a big misunderstanding, that the person that they were chatting with was not me, and that they were being catfished. Now they started yelling and making a scene, saying that I was a liar and demanding that I give them back their money. I tried to reason with them and explain that I was not the one behind this, but I knew who was: Max. He was trying to embarrass me on the most important day of my life. Hearing all the commotion, nearly half the office was in the lobby trying to get a piece of the action. Even my boss came out and she was absolutely furious to see the commotion. She was even more furious to see me with these three men who were demanding me to either sleep with them or give back their money. I was too appalled and embarrassed to even look at her. She told me to leave immediately and handle the situation outside. My heart broke. I left and told the guys that I would give them back their money and clear everything up, and rushed straight to Max's parents' house. I didn't know where he was staying at the moment, but figured his parents must know. I was surprised to see that Max and his parents were waiting for me. They didn't even let me inside the house. I demanded answers and even showed them proof of the conversations, but they just laughed at me and told me that I was getting a taste of my own medicine. I had embarrassed them at the party and humiliated Max during our entire relationship, and they were just trying to get even. They didn't even give me any more explanations and shut the door in my face. I stood there for more than an hour trying to get answers, but no response. I'm back home now. I still cannot get over this. I didn't know Max could fall to such a level, let alone his parents. I've called my friends, and they all think that I should report this to the police. As for my boss, I don't know how I'm going to face her tomorrow. I feel shattered. What do I do? Okay, so a lot has happened in these past few days. I was ready to go to the police and accuse Max and his family for not only using my photos without my consent and catfishing people, but also taking money from them and pimping me out when I got a call from him saying that I couldn't do anything because the three guys that came to my office were actually friends of his. He and his parents had orchestrated this whole thing. They planned the chats and actually gave them some money to go to my workplace and embarrass me and get me fired because apparently I quote-unquote ruined his life. And the rest of his family, including his sister and some of his friends, want nothing to do with him anymore. I didn't think he was capable of being this smart, but also said that he was the one who leaked the private messages to my coworkers, but I had already figured that out. I couldn't believe that this man was so insecure and threatened of me and my success that he was willing to put this much time and effort into putting me down. There was a time when I was deeply in love with him, saw an actual future with him, and was willing to disregard all his red flags, which are so obvious to me now. I never should have settled for such a weak-minded, revengeful man who was stunting me instead of letting me thrive. In a way, I was glad I caught him cheating sooner rather than later and broke up because I really did dodge a bullet. He may be smart, but I am even smarter. I recorded the entire phone call so that I could use it to prove my point and as evidence, proving that he was the one who planned this whole thing. Now that I have some evidence with me, I plan to get a restraining order on all three of them. I don't want to press charges and get drawn into a long and expensive legal battle. I want to forget this chapter and get them out of my life once and for all. As for my work, it's been 2 days and I haven't been back to work since the incident. I have emailed my boss and tried to tell her my side of things, and I'm going back to work tomorrow to speak to her face to face and show her the evidence. Please wish me luck. The deal with the client is still on despite everything that went down, but I still need to clear things up with everyone. I'll let you know how it goes. Hi guys, it's been a couple of more days since my last update. I went back to work yesterday, and the first thing that I did was apologize to all my coworkers regarding the comments that I passed about them in text with Max. I explained that I was new to the company, pretty immature, and wasn't a bit of a high horse. I admit it, but either way, it was extremely unprofessional of me, and I am a much different person now. My coworkers were understanding enough, and they forgave me, especially after I told them about the whole fiasco with Max. They could tell that I was stressed out and actually reassured me that the meeting with my boss was going to be okay. They also jokingly mentioned that they gossiped about me when the 3 guys showed up at my work asking for me, but everything was good now and they were on my side. What goes around comes around, I guess. The meeting with my boss went better than expected. She was a little mad but was willing to hear me out. After I explained my side of the story and even played the phone recording for her, she understood everything and actually said a few choice things about Max, which made me feel more at ease. She said that she was never planning on firing me. She was just annoyed by the fact that there was such a big commotion at work when there was such an important client present. She told me to get back to work by the next day, and there was a lot of work to do because we still had to seal that deal with the client. I can't tell you how relieved I am. As for Max, I have completely blocked him and his family from all platforms. I have filed for a restraining order on all 3 of them, which is still processing and should be confirmed by tomorrow. A lot of y'all have asked me to press charges, but like I said before, that is going to lead to a lot of court visits and legal fees. I don't want to waste a single penny on them anymore, or even see them again. I just want this chapter closed. So a restraining order works perfectly for me. Thank you for all the advice. The restraining orders have been approved. Thank you, Lord. I'm back at work and things seem to be going smoothly. I also have some great news. We got the deal with a big client. My boss couldn't be happier, and I'm so grateful that everything worked out with this deal despite everything I was going through in my personal life. I would like to thank you once again for all the prayers. It worked, and I'm glad I can leave this all behind me and move ahead. Hello, it's been 5 months since I've updated. Just wanted to come back here and read the comments and also give a small update. Things have been going great. I haven't had any contact with Max or his family since the restraining order. I honestly feel so much better without them in my life. Things at work are also good, and I have a new man in my life. We just started dating and he treats me right. So different from how Max used to treat me. Just thought I should let you all know. Thanks for all the advice. And that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We will be seeing you in the next one.